Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Jan Czerwiński. Overnight, Russia launched missile and drone attacks against Ukraine, targeting the country's capital. Although air defense systems downed most of the incoming projectiles and drones, fires broke out in Kyiv in the aftermath, and as of this moment, 4 people are reported dead and 20 are wounded. Citizens of Kyiv took shelter underground as the Russian barrage continued throughout the night. The Ukrainian Air Force reported that Moscow used cruise missiles launched from strategic aircraft, ballistic missiles and swarms of Shahed drones to carry out the attacks. This is the latest in a series of Russian airstrikes targeting civilians, following last week's Ukrainian drone attack, which saw 30% of Moscow's bomber fleet destroyed. An attack to which Vladimir Putin said Russia is obligated to respond. Now, reports are emerging that Ukrainian forces have successfully carried out an overnight drone attack on Russia's Engels oil refinery in the Saratov region. Footage circulating on social media shows the refinery site ablaze. There are also videos picturing plumes of dark smoke rising on the horizon, well into the morning. No casualties related to the attack have been reported so far. The refinery supplies fuel to the Engels II military airfield and was previously targeted by Ukrainian forces back in January. This attack comes after a series of major Ukrainian strikes against military targets inside Russia. We are counting on strong decisions. This is what is lacking now, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during his evening address on Thursday. He was referring to the recent visit of the Ukrainian delegation to Washington, where they held meetings with US officials. Zelensky emphasized that only strong actions can actually stop Russia from continuing its aggression.
These days, our team is holding meetings in Washington, officials, military representatives and the office team. I thank everyone who attended briefings held by the Ukrainian delegation. We had meetings in Congress with representatives of the US administration, journalists and civil society organizations. There is understanding and support. We are counting on strong decisions. This is what is lacking now. But strong decisions can make even the criminals in Moscow feel that they cannot sustain this war. This must be ensured.
The NATO defense ministers' meeting in Brussels has drawn to a close. Among the main conclusions of the meeting are prospects of increased defense spending across the alliance in order to counter the belligerent attitude exhibited by Russia, as well as Washington's pivot to the Indo-Pacific. According to NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte, the upcoming NATO summit in The Hague will see the approval of a new defense investment plan, agreed to by the alliance's defense ministers in Brussels. The proposal calls for allies to invest 5% of GDP in defense, including 3.5% on core defense spending, as well as 1.5% per year on defense and security-related investment, including in infrastructure and resilience. Allied defense ministers at the Brussels meeting also reaffirmed their support of Ukraine, with Mark Rutte noting that NATO states have pledged an additional 20 billion euros in additional security assistance this year alone. Finally, defense ministers took part in NATO's nuclear planning group meeting in Brussels, pledging to continue supporting NATO's nuclear deterrence as a cornerstone of alliance security. Now, following a meeting of NATO defense ministers, Mark Rutte said that he, and I quote, will propose an overall investment plan that will total 5% of GDP in defense investment at the upcoming NATO summit in The Hague. He added that the ministers agreed on an ambitious new set of capability targets, paving the way for increased defense spending across the alliance.
We agreed on an ambitious new set of capability targets, and this is so important. These targets describe exactly what capabilities allies need to invest in over the coming years. Air defense, fighter jets, tanks, drones, personnel, logistics, and so much more. All of this is needed to keep our deterrence and defense strong and our 1 billion people safe. Agreeing on what we need was a vital first step. To deliver on these needs, allies will need to invest much more in defense. And that is now the work ahead of us for The Hague. To agree a new defense investment plan that will ensure we have enough resources to be able to deter and defend in this more dangerous world. I will propose an overall investment plan that will total 5% of GDP in defense investment, 3.5% of GDP for core defense spending. This is based on what it will cost to meet the new capability targets that ministers have just agreed, and 1.5% of GDP per year in defense and security-related investments like infrastructure and industry.
In an exclusive interview with TVP World, Gerlinde Nichus, former NATO Defense Director of Security and Cooperation, spoke about the prospect of increasing defense spending across the alliance to 5% of GDP. She also expressed the opinion that the addition of spending 1.5% of GDP on defense-adjacent projects is a logical addition to core defense spending of 3.5%.
Germany has already indicated that they are supporting the increase in defense spending to 5%, so 3.5 of that in core defense spending and 1.5 to broader security and defense-related matters such as infrastructure, cyber, etc. So that has already been confirmed by Merz, but also by other ministers of the government. Now, where the money will go, I guess that's part of the negotiation to follow. I think it's also logical that if you want to have efficient security and defense, or deterrence and defense, I mean, you also need to have roads which are broad enough for tanks to go through, or bridges which are strong enough to allow a tank to cover, or you need to have an infrastructure which is secure against cyber attacks. So in many ways, I think this 1.5 on defense, on security-related investments is a logical addition to the core defense spending of 3.5%.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski took to social media to address Elon Musk following the tech mogul's fallout with US President Donald Trump. Sikorski's post quoted a heated exchange between him and Elon Musk, which followed the Polish Foreign Minister pointing out that Poland partly pays for Musk's Starlink technologies used in Ukraine. In response, Musk called Sikorski a small man. Musk worked for the Trump administration, overseeing a department responsible for cutting down what they deemed to be unnecessary costs. But the spat between the US president and his South African-born aide could lead to the closure of Musk's department within the White House. The tech mogul took to his social media platform X with a stunning reveal, saying that the sitting US president was involved in a series of scandals related to American financier and child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Their online exchange continued, and Donald Trump later said the easiest way for the US government to save money is in fact to terminate Musk's governmental subsidies and contracts. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz met with US President Donald Trump in the Oval Office on Thursday. The German leader attempted to convince Trump to soften his stance on imposing tariffs on the European Union, which are especially harmful to the German automotive industry.
Thank you, first of all, Mr. President, for your kind invitation to come to Washington, D.C. I was in this building first time ever in 1982. I told you, when former President Ronald Reagan was in office. So I'm very happy to be here again and to offer our close cooperation with the United States of America. We are having so much in common, our history. We owe the Americans a lot. We will never forget about that.
I think all we want is just going to have a good relationship. The rest will just sort of follow very easily. We'll have a good trade deal. I mean, I guess that will be mostly determined by the European Union, but you're a very big part of that, so you'll be involved. But we'll end up hopefully with a trade deal, or we'll do something, we'll do the tariffs. I mean, I'm okay with the tariffs, or we make a deal with the trade, and I guess that's what we're discussing now.
The Chancellor managed to establish a good personal relationship with President Trump, something that is not to be underestimated in the light of numerous issues to be resolved between Germany and the US. This is according to Rolf Nickel, the former German ambassador to Poland, who spoke with TVP World about the Chancellor's visit in Washington.
Chancellor managed to establish a good personal relationship with President Trump, which is not a small thing under the circumstances. So, on your question, I think, of course, there is this question of tariffs, and obviously the position of the US president and of the majority of European states that depend on exporting to the US is a very difficult one. And as you said, also the negotiations on this issue on trade is a community matter, so the Commission is doing it. But of course, the Chancellor has said that he would like to help and create a sort of a working group between the Chancellor's office and the White House on these issues. There are several areas where this could work. First of all, of course, there is a lot of investment, and there could be more. Secondly, we could take more American products. For example, oil, gas, etc. President Trump, in the discussion, praised the possibilities that exist in this domain. And I mean, when we look at the trade deficit, there is a trade deficit. But when you look at services, this is the other way around.
Russia's massive interference machine will do absolutely everything to win in Moldova, said Eusebius Lavitescu, a former Romanian diplomat, in a recent TVP World interview, referring to the growing fear of potential Russian influence in the upcoming parliamentary elections in the country. But what is Russia's interest in backing specific political forces? And what does the Kremlin truly want to achieve?
Russia's massive interference machine will do absolutely everything to win in Moldova in September. The stakes for Russia now are enormous in Moldova, although they might not seem so enormous given its relatively small country, not that rich, not in the European Union, not in NATO, neutral by constitution. So what would be Russia's game, and why are they willing to put in millions of dollars, as we have seen during the referendum campaign and Maya Sandu's elections? We have seen planes moving from countries to countries. We have seen millions of dollars stopped at the borders by the Moldovan frontier police, just as we have seen in Romania, millions and millions. And this can only get worse for a very simple reason. Russia has always tried, once they created this frozen conflict, like Transnistria is one of them, to instrumentalize it and use it as a weapon, as a foreign policy weapon, whenever they need it. This is textbook Russian manuals.
President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, is visiting the Vatican today. He is set to meet Pope Leo XIV. Later during the day, Costa is also meeting Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. This will be the first meeting between the President of the European Council and the newly elected Pope, who has recently held a phone conversation with Vladimir Putin, during which the pontiff asked the Russian president to take the gesture that would favor peace in Ukraine. Today, Antonio Costa is also meeting with Giorgia Meloni, who earlier this week met with French President Emmanuel Macron, a gathering intended to mend ties between Italy and France, which Costa called a step in the right direction. And with this, we conclude our news bulletin. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news, updates and commentary.